The weight of my confession sits heavy in my chest as I write these words. I'm Richard Walker, director of the prestigious Walker Theater Company, and this is the story of how my obsession with legacy led me to commit an act that nearly destroyed multiple lives, including my own son's. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment when my carefully orchestrated world began to unravel. For generations, the Walker Theater Company has been more than just a theater. It's been our family's crown jewel, our legacy to the world of performing arts. Every decision I made, every production I directed, was aimed at preserving and enhancing this legacy. And at the center of it all was my son, Ethan, the brightest star I had ever cultivated. When Michelle Carter joined our company as a software developer, I initially saw it as a brilliant strategic move. She was exceptional, a Black woman whose innovative ideas promised to revolutionize how audiences experience theater. Her interactive technology system was groundbreaking, combining virtual elements with live performance in ways that could have launched us into a new era of theatrical production. But then something happened that I hadn't anticipated. Ethan and Michelle fell in love. I still remember the first time I noticed the change in my son, the way his eyes would follow her across the theater during rehearsals, how his voice softened when speaking about her innovations. It wasn't just attraction. It was something deeper, more threatening to everything I had planned. You see, Michelle came from a different world than ours. Her parents were hard-working people who had sacrificed everything to give her an education. She spoke often about her plans to move back to her small hometown, to care for them as they aged. The mere thought of it sent me into a panic. How could my son, destined for international stages and global acclaim, possibly fulfill his potential while tied to a small-town life? The more I watched them grow closer, the more desperate I became. I began to see threats everywhere. In the way she encouraged him to think beyond traditional theater, in how she spoke about the importance of family over career, in the way she was slowly changing his priorities. My son, who had once been solely focused on his craft, was now talking about balance and personal fulfillment. That's when I made my first fatal decision. I began to subtly sabotage Michelle's project. Small things at first, corrupted data files, mysterious system glitches, unexplained delays. I told myself I was protecting our legacy, protecting Ethan's future. But with each act of sabotage, I felt myself becoming someone I didn't recognize. The day of the accident plays in my mind like a horror film on endless loop. I had tampered with the safety protocols of her interactive system, expecting it would simply malfunction during the crucial demonstration. I never imagined, never intended. The sound of the crane falling still haunts my nightmares. Michelle's scream cut short, the sickening thud. Ethan's desperate cry as he ran to her motionless body. The hospital waiting room became our new stage, with a tragedy I had authored unfolding before my eyes. The doctor's words, severe spinal injury, may never walk again. Each phrase was a dagger of guilt twisting deeper into my conscience. I watched my son, broken and desperate, holding Michelle's hand through those first terrible days, and still I said nothing. But Ethan has always been more perceptive than I gave him credit for. He began investigating the accident, driven by a suspicion that something wasn't right. I observed his determination with growing dread, knowing it was only a matter of time before he uncovered the truth. The confrontation, when it came, was devastating. I'll never forget the look in his eyes when he presented the evidence, security footage, technical logs, witness statements, all pointing to deliberate sabotage, all pointing to me. How could you, Dad? His voice, usually so strong on stage, cracked with emotion. She could have died. She still might never walk again. All because what? Because you couldn't stand the thought of me loving someone who didn't fit your perfect plan. The shame was overwhelming. In that moment, I saw myself clearly for the first time. Not as a guardian of a precious legacy, but as a man so blinded by control that he had almost destroyed everything that was truly valuable in my life. Before I tell you about the terrible mistake that almost cost a young woman her life, I need to confess something else. I've never understood love, not the kind they write plays about. My own marriage to Eleanor taught me that love is something to be crafted, arranged, like staging a perfect scene. God, how wrong I was. Before I tell you about the terrible mistake that almost cost a young woman her life, I need to confess something else. I've never understood love, not the kind they write plays about. My own marriage to Eleanor taught me that love is something to be crafted, arranged, like staging a perfect scene. God, how wrong I was. Eleanor was a promising ballet dancer when we met. I saw in her what I see in everything. Potential, opportunity, a piece to be moved on my grand chessboard of theatrical ambition. Our courtship was brief, strategic. She brought grace and artistic connections to the Walker name, and I offered her family's struggling dance studio the prestige of our theater's backing. What I never offered her was my heart. While I spent endless hours at the theater, molding young talents and building our legacy, Eleanor withered in our mansion's shadows. She would attend our productions, always perfectly poised in the front row, but her eyes held a sadness I chose to ignore. By the time she was diagnosed with cancer, we were essentially strangers sharing a home. Her last words to me, "Richard, you never saw me," haunt me more than any ghost in our theater's rafters. Perhaps that's why I became so obsessed with orchestrating my children's lives. Victoria, my eldest, was my first masterpiece of social engineering. When Maxwell Rothschild mentioned his son James was returning from London's theater scene, I saw my chance. The Rothschilds weren't just theater royalty. They were old money with connections that could secure the Walker Theater Company's future for generations. The marriage I arranged between Victoria and James was perfect on paper. What I learned later, what I chose to ignore, tells a different story. The whispers about James's private parties with young actresses, the suspicious business trips that coincided with his former Flames touring schedule, the way Victoria's smile never quite reaches her eyes anymore, just like Eleanor's didn't. When Daniel, our stage manager, tried to tell me about seeing James with a young ingenue at a downtown hotel, I silenced him with a promotion and a reminder about discretion. The Rothschild fortune was too important to our future. Then there was Ethan's teenage romance with Sarah Mitchell. She was everything I feared, spontaneous, rebellious, encouraging my son to live a little. When Ethan's performance in Romeo and Juliet lacked its usual precision because he'd been at a party the night before, I acted. A few careful words to Sarah's father about a wonderful opportunity in Seattle, and the problem disappeared. Ethan's broken heart healed. His focus returned to the stage where it belonged. So when Michelle Carter walked into our theater with her revolutionary ideas about interactive technology, I should have seen the danger immediately. She was brilliant, yes. Her innovations promised to modernize our productions in ways that could secure our relevance for decades. But she was also genuine, passionate, and worst of all, she made Ethan light up in a way I hadn't seen since Sarah. The aftermath has been a journey through hell of my own making. Michelle's recovery has been painful and uncertain. Her determination in the face of possibly permanent disability has shown me what true strength looks like. She refuses to be defeated, working with therapists, adapting her technological innovations to accommodate her new limitations. Ethan has stood by her through everything, showing a depth of character that I can take no credit for. Their love, tested by my actions, has only grown stronger. Meanwhile, I've had to face the consequences of my actions, legal, professional, and personal. The Walker Theater Company is changing now, in ways I never imagined. Under Ethan's influence, and with Michelle's continued innovation despite her injuries, we're becoming more inclusive, more forward-thinking. The interactive system she designed, once fully implemented, has indeed revolutionized how audiences experience theater, though not in the way any of us originally envisioned. I watch from the shadows now, no longer the commanding presence I once was. The success of their latest production, a groundbreaking fusion of traditional theater and interactive technology, should have been my triumph. Instead, It's a bittersweet reminder of how close I came to destroying everything in my pursuit of control. Michelle's parents, whom I once viewed with such unfounded disdain, have shown me more grace than I deserve. Their forgiveness, offered not because I deserve it, but because holding on to hatred would only cause more harm, has taught me more about true nobility than all my years in the theater world. As I conclude this confession, I want to be clear. This is not a story of redemption. Some actions can never be fully redeemed. Rather, it's a warning about the destructive power of prejudice and control masked as parental love. It's about the cost of valuing legacy over humanity and the painful journey of facing one's own monstrosity. The Walker Theater Company continues, but its legacy is being rewritten, not by my grand plans or controlling vision, but by the very thing I fought against: love, innovation, and the courage to change. Ethan and Michelle are creating something new and beautiful from the ashes of my mistakes, proving that the greatest legacy isn't the one we plan, but the one we allow to grow naturally from truth and love. Now, as I watch from the shadows while Ethan and Michelle create something beautiful from the wreckage of my mistakes, I finally understand what Eleanor tried to tell me. Love isn't about control or legacy or perfect casting. It's about seeing people for who they really are, not who we want them to be. Victoria came to see me yesterday. She's pregnant, the next generation of our carefully constructed dynasty. But when she told me, there were tears in her eyes that had nothing to do with joy. I did what I've always done, pretended not to notice. Some habits, it seems, die harder than others. The Walker Theater Company continues, but its story is being rewritten by the very things I fought against: genuine love, organic innovation, and the courage to let go of control. Ethan and Michelle are creating something new and beautiful from the ashes of my mistakes, while Victoria lives out the carefully scripted life I arranged for her. Two different paths, two different kinds of love, one real, one manufactured. And I live with my guilt, working every day to be worthy of the forgiveness I've been offered, knowing some debts can never be fully repaid. This is my story, not of a protective father, but of a man who almost destroyed everything he claimed to love, and who must now live with the consequences of his actions. Perhaps the greatest tragedy isn't what I did to Michelle, but what I've done to all of us in my relentless pursuit of the perfect performance. Real life, I'm learning too late, isn't meant to be scripted. And I live with my guilt, working every day to be worthy of the forgiveness I've been offered, knowing some debts can never be fully repaid. This is my story, not of a protective father, but of a man who almost destroyed everything he claimed to love, and who must now live with the consequences of his actions. Well, you've made it this far, haven't you? Now that you've tasted the bitter flavor of my story, don't stop here. The curtain is about to rise on so much more. Want to dive deeper into this world of unbridled ambition and unexpected consequences? Click on the playlist at the end of this video. There you'll find stories that'll make your head spin. But don't be just a silent spectator in this real-life theater. Become part of the cast. Follow our channel now. Each new subscriber is another character in this ever-evolving drama. And if my confession stirred something in you, whether it's outrage or a curiosity you'd rather not admit, show it with a like. Come on, I know you want to see how far this rabbit hole goes. So, what do you say? Are you ready for the next act? The playlist is waiting, the subscribe button is right there, and the stage is set. The choice is yours. But remember, in the theater of life, sometimes the best roles are given to those who dare to participate.